Hello, everyone. This is Miguel. I am a personal growth strategist. That means that I help individuals to think strategically so that they can accomplish their breakthrough moment. Have you ever established a goal and weren't able to accomplish it? Well, this is where I come in. I help individuals implement a strategy so that they can accomplish their goal. I'm also the host of the Strategy Rewind podcast. The Strategy Rewind podcast focuses on the mindset and strategies necessary for a breakthrough moment. What is a breakthrough moment? A breakthrough moment is that moment where your knowledge and your skills of something, they come together and they gel, they mesh, and you're able to actually go to that next level. The idea of the breakthrough moment is not just being able to finally accomplish your goal and scratch something off of the to-do list and be able to say, I did it. It's also be able to elevate to another level. And oftentimes we don't see ourselves capable of even having another level, another gear, another option, another way of living. But that is what we talk about here, that there is more. There's more inside of you. There's more potential, more gifts, more talents than what you can imagine. And oftentimes what happens is that we neglect to actually investigate. We do not discover. And if we don't discover those gifts, then we can't develop those gifts. And we obviously cannot allow them to mature, which would allow us to have a bigger impact in our lives. And don't you want to have an impact? Don't you want to leave your mark? Don't you want to leave a legacy? I'm sure you do. I'm sure in whatever avenue, whatever area you're in your life, you want to leave an impact. You want to leave a legacy. And again, that's what we talk about here on the Strategy Rewind podcast. Hey, I'm live on the Wisdom application. I want to encourage those that are joining the room here live right now to, at any point you feel like it, go ahead and click that button, become a guest, become part of the conversation. Be aware that we are streaming also this conversation through the Strategy Rewind podcast that is available on all audio platforms. So those listening on the Strategy Rewind podcast and you want to join the conversation, do so by downloading the Wisdom application. And those who are listening on the Wisdom app, if you want to check out the Strategy Rewind podcast, I would highly encourage you to do so. And while you're at it, please consider subscribing and doing all those wonderful things. Of course, tell a friend to tell a friend, because after all, the more the merrier. Now, let's get to what we want to talk about here today. And we want to talk about the fact that there is no such thing as your truth. I understand that this title, this conversation, can stir up some thoughts, some emotions. So again, this is a moment that I want to encourage those who are joining the room here on Wisdom. If you want to join the conversation, feel free to do so. I want to present to you why I believe that there is no such thing as your truth. And I want to present to you in this fashion. Have you ever played a video game? And in the video game, it's played by first person experience. Or sometimes you can even see this in a movie where they're running the film as though you were the individual making all the actions. And of course, when that happens, it's you soaring in the sky. It's you see the arms and feet, but you don't see anything else, right? You are diving in to the point of view of that particular individual, that character. The same thing happens in books, by the way. You may read a book where it's from the point of view of the author, and the author is telling you the story from a point of view, a vantage point as the author or as a narrator. And oftentimes in a book or a movie or in other circumstances, we don't see necessarily a point of view, but we see a perspective. And so I think that to start off this conversation, we want to make a difference on what is perspective and what is point of view. Again, as you join the room, feel free to hit that button and become part of the conversation. We're establishing today that there is no such thing as your truth. If you feel differently or the same, feel free to click that button. Again, when we talk about perspective and when we talk about point of view, we have to know that those two things are different. So the way to explain point of view is that you are you and I am I. I think that's easy enough to understand. The point of view that you have is the experiences that you have had in your life, and they have been in your body, in your shoes. That's the point of view that you have. You know, when they say walk a mile in someone else's shoes, well, this is difficult because I can maybe learn about your perspective, but my point of view is going to continue to be my point of view. Another example or illustration of this is if you ever stand in a room, and if you stand in a room from, let's say, the entrance, you have one point of view, which is yours, but you also have one perspective, which is that of the entrance of the room. Now, let's say you stand in the front of the room. Imagine a classroom, if you will. It's one thing to be at the entrance of that classroom. It's another thing when you're standing in front of the chalkboards and you're looking at all of the desks. You now have a different perspective. Your point of view has not changed because you are still you. You're still only experiencing life through this vessel that is each individual's body. So that point of view isn't going to change, but your perspective of the room has now changed. And of course, that's because you have the vantage point of seeing the back of the room, the front of the room, the side. You've walked around, so you know the layout. It's like your house. You know all of the rooms within your house. Of course, the point of view that you have of the rooms is different from your roommate or significant other or family member or friend who lives with you. Why? Because you are two individuals. These two distinct individuals have two different points of views. But what can be altered, what can change, what can morph is your perspective. Why? Because in that example of the classroom, when you stood at the back of the class, you had one viewpoint, you had one perspective, and that's, man, I'm all the way over there, the teacher's all the way over there, he's doing this and that. It must come easy to him. But then you get called to the front, and you're standing in front of all those individuals who are sitting at their desks. Now you have a different view, right? And what this causes is a different perspective. This is where you can fully understand, hey, it's not easy being the student, but it also isn't easy being the teacher. So having these experiences, having dialogue, and actually challenging what you consider to be your perspective will widen perspective, allow you for a more healthier perspective. And again, your point of view didn't change. It's not like you're experiencing life as a different person, but you become a person who has a more well-rounded perspective. So your point of view is the only one that you have, which is yours. But your perspective can change, right? Just because your perspective changed doesn't mean that your point of view or the eyes in which you look at things change. It's like having glasses. If you ever have a pair of glasses that you've worn out for far too long, and then you go to the doctor, they give you the new prescription, and you put on new glasses. Well, what changed? What changed? You gained clarity. The increase of that particular prescription for your eyes allowed you to see more things that you had not seen before, but the things around you didn't change. The room didn't change. The environment may not have changed, but you now have a clear viewpoint. And perspective works in that fashion, in that your perspective is those pockets of the event that's taking place, right? And so when we talk about dialogue, for example, if we are having a conversation about an event that, let's say, between you and I, maybe an argument, and we're discussing the cause of that argument, the reason of that argument. Well, in this case, you have your point of view, which is from your vantage point, right? Wherever you were standing, in the front of the class or the back of the class, right? That viewpoint is different. But then you also have your perspective. Maybe you've stood at the back of the class so you can understand what it feels like being in, and I'm using the example because I've already established the analogy, but I guess a more general example could be if you've been in a vehicle as the driver versus as the passenger versus as the passenger in the back seat, right? When you were a kid and you were sitting in the passenger side in the back seat, it seemed one way. As you grew, you gained better perspective. You were able to see things from a different viewpoint. And now being a driver and being a perspective, you know what it is to be both things, because you have experienced both things. Same thing if you're a teacher and a student, you've experienced both things, right? If you go live on the Wisdom app, or you have a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever it is, you know the vantage point, you know the perspective of what it is of seeing someone do that and doing it yourself. We talk about setting goals. Oftentimes we talk about the point of, do you know anyone around you who's already done that, so that they can provide you some sort of blueprint? Right? Why? Because they have a perspective, they have a viewpoint that you don't have. And so if you and I are in a conversation and we're trying to figure out the reasoning for our argument, or we're trying to figure out why things are the way they are, well, you're going to have your perspective, I'm going to have my perspective, and maybe because of my experiences, I can somewhat recognize where you're coming from, and maybe because of your experiences, you can do the same. Of course, in that there's empathy and there's a trying to understand the other individual, there's communication tactics. But when we just talk about point of view and perspective, that's the differences. You're always going to have your point of view, but your perspective can change. And I established that here first, because when we talk about, well, that's your truth. No, there is no your truth. And there is no your truth, because all you have is your perspective. And your perspective can change based upon conversation, information, events that take place. Your perspective changes. Like, you may have started off thinking one thing, but then as you gathered more information about that particular subject, then you changed. Rather, that would be faith and religion. Rather, that would be relationship status. Rather, that would be career. Rather, that particular goal, a talent, a gift, a hobby, whatever it may be. You initiated with a particular perspective, and you said, okay, I'm going to go through the process. And then you said, you know what? I tried it. I didn't like it. I don't want to be a part of it. Or maybe you said, I want to keep going in deeper. I want to pursue that more. So there is no your truth, their truth. It's you have your perspective. And what happens is that when we say with your truth, we're almost saying that there's more than one truth. You are convinced that your perspective is correct, but your perspective can be wrong. Because your perspective is based upon your experiences and or information that you have gathered. This is why individuals get bothered with the quote unquote fake media, because we can see easily that some reporters do little to no effort in gathering all of the details, which in turn skews the perspective of the individual who is listening to that reporter. Because they've only provided to you some of the details, some of the information, and sometimes the information they provide isn't even useful information. Well, you ask yourself, how is this news? How is this relevant to what's happening in the world? And so when we talk about the truth, there is only one truth. There is only one truth. Right? If 2023 isn't going the way you anticipated it to go, and you want to blame everyone else, fine, blame everyone else. You want to blame the president, blame the president. You want to blame the government, go ahead. You want to blame the roads and highways or NASA or Tesla or whoever you want to blame, go ahead. But that's not your truth. That's your perspective, which could be wrong. And this is the thing, that when we talk about personal growth, when we talk about development, it's not about your truth, their truth, my truth, whose truth. No, there's the truth. The truth is that sometimes we could do more. The truth is that sometimes we're not living up to our potential. That's the truth. And of course, your perspective, you may say, well, no, it's because of this, that, and the other. But if you challenge that perspective, then you'll see something much more different. If you challenge that perspective, your perspective becomes much more well-rounded. Your perspective becomes much more different. I had a perspective that if I stood up late at night, that I would be able to do more work. But then I started going to bed early and waking up really early. And then I realized that the same amount of work, if not even more or more productive, I can do it early in the morning. So my perspective shifted. So I can speak to you from both sides, from that of an individual who broke night to do work and from an individual who wakes up early in the morning to do work. I can speak to you from both sides. Did my point of view change? No, I'm living it through me. I'm seeing it through my eyes, through my lens, but my perspective on the case did change. Was I wrong previously? I would say yes. The truth, did it change? No, the truth didn't change. The science and the data shows that sleep is massively important. And the data was always out there. The science was always out there. But I had my perspective. And my perspective shifted based upon information and based upon experience. And you can say, oh, you had your truth. Well, what's now? Is this another truth? How many truthesses are there? I don't know if truthesses is a real word, but how many are there? There can only be one truth, one authentic truth. Everything else is your perspective, and you can have your perspective. You're entitled to your perspective, but it may be an ill-informed perspective. And oftentimes we take the perspective or the mindset that we are the victim and that everything that's happening in life is because we were just dealt the wrong cards or dealt the wrong hands. It's like that's not the truth. That's not the truth. Not everybody wakes up with a silver spoon in their mouth. In fact, the majority of people who over time have become millionaires or billionaires were people who did not inherit that billionaire status or that money, but rather they went out there and they worked and they grinded and they made it happen for their stuff. They found a way. You know, previously here on the Wisdom app, I was talking to Daryl with the dashes. and he was talking about how being poor and coming from a poor background or a background that didn't have too many advantages, it forced them to be creative. It forced them to think outside of what was considered the realm of possibilities. And the truth is that you and I may not come from the best quote unquote background, but you know what? If you use the cards that are dealt to you, the cards that you do have, then you can actually be better. You can do better. But sometimes we have built this idea that, well, this is your truth. Your truth is that your family is broken. You know, your truth is that your parents were divorced by the time you were 2 years old, like in my case. Your father was an addict, like in my case. Your father was in and out of jail, like in my case. Your mother had multiple children from different marriages and some even out of wedlock, like in my case. Well, Miguel, I guess your truth is that statistically you ain't going nowhere. Yeah, okay, fine. That's what that says, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm gonna fight like hell. I'm not gonna settle for that statistic, to that number, to that. That ain't the truth I accept. And so there's a shift in perspective that has to take place. And what I want to challenge you here today is that if you've accepted the narrative of, well, that's your truth, I'm not buying into that. You know how many things I believed that were wrong, that were false, that when tested over time, I realized that ain't it. Think about it for yourself. How many things did you believe to be genuine, to be authentic, to be real? And then after time, you were like, yeah, I judged that one wrong. How many people do you know that actually bet and gamble on games, on things and outcomes? And then what happens? They get it wrong and they end up losing a lot of money, a whole lot of money. You say, well, that was your truth that you were going to win. No, that was their perspective. And it was ill-informed and it was ill-advised and it was reckless. And you can go down the list. The truth is that if 2020 isn't going the way you anticipated it, that it was going to go, that's not your truth. It's right now the experience you're having and it's your perspective. But oftentimes what we need in our life is someone to challenge our perspective. Someone to come and actually challenge your perspective. In fact, sometimes what we need is clarity. And we lack the clarity oftentimes because we lack the ability to have conversations with people that have a different perspective, that have a different vantage point than what we do. And maybe in your circle you don't have that, but here's what I'd like to challenge you. I'd like to challenge you to visit MiguelLeBron.com and set up a clarity session, because that's what you need. You need clarity to be able to set up a proper plan, a proper strategy, to properly be able to determine what are your goals, what are your values, to properly be able to determine what's next. You need clarity. And in a world that seems like everyone has their own truth, at some point or another, we have to say there's just one truth. And it's somewhere in the middle of your perspective, my perspective. There's got to be one truth, and that truth has to maintain. So when we talk about systems and models, what we're saying is this is truth. This can be tested. This has been tested. It can be viewed. Anyone can do it. Anyone can utilize it. And that's what we're saying when we say truth. It has to maintain. It can't just shift and alter based upon feelings and emotions, because ultimately you and I know that, well, truth doesn't care about feelings and emotions. It maintains. And in a world where everyone seems to have a truth or their truth, I think we're all seeking the same thing, and it's the truth. Listen, I've been coaching for quite a while. And you've probably heard, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And what this lets us know is something. It lets us know that failure and success has less to do with the outcome and more to do with the preparation. And we've limited the definition of success and failure to mean, well, failure is I did not accomplish. It's the opposite of succeeding. Right? I didn't accomplish what I wanted to. And success is accomplishing what I intended on accomplishing. And I think it's much more deeper than that. And when you decide that you want to actually carve out a space where you can see success, as I mentioned, clarity is needed. Now, here's what I'd like to present to you. I'd like to present to you the opportunity to be part of a free course, which is the start of a master plan model. This is a model that works. It's been tested. I've been using it for years with my clients, and I'd like to bring it to you for free. Why for free? Well, because truly I want to see you succeed. And I understand how important it is to build trust, and it's something that has to be deserved. It has to be earned. And I would like to help you accomplish your breakthrough moment. I would like to help you accomplish your dreams and goals in 2023. And this course, titled The Start of a Master Plan, will be hosted on March 4th of this year, 2023. Now, here's the thing. There's only 20 spots. But let me tell you what the benefits are so you can understand if this is for you or not. Here are the benefits. An opportunity to be connected with grow-minded people that want to grow just like you. Supplies of worksheets and PDFs that you can go through and actually do the work in that particular moment. And not only that, I'll also provide to you the recording of the talks that will take place in that course. So if you end up signing up, if for some reason or another something takes place that you can't connect, I'll still send you the worksheet and I'll still send you the recording. In this particular course, you'll be able to identify and understand your core values, and I'll even provide you a framework, a powerful framework for defining success. And if you sign up and you are present, you'll also get a discount for the next group coaching event. Again, I want to invite you to be part of this course, the Start of a Master Plan course. This model that I believe can make your 2023 an amazing year. It's time for you to actually put together a master plan of what you're going to do and what the next several years is going to look like for you. And as I mentioned, that requires clarity. Now, here's the thing. There's only 20 spots available. So I want to encourage you to visit MiguelLeBron.com and go ahead and set it up today. Reserve your spot today. It's totally free. Again, you won't have to pay for anything in this particular course, and I am inviting you today. So if you need clarity, you can set up a clarity session with me. But if you really want to take this year and start that master plan. I really want to encourage you to be part of this course that's going to be taking place. I don't think there's a thing of your truth and my truth. There's just your perspective and my perspective. But you know how we gain better perspective and a more well-rounded and healthier perspective? Through conversation, through dialogue, through discovery, through development. It's that moment that your perspective shifts, and it's much more easier for you to position yourself to have a breakthrough moment.